Welcome to our Nowak Society community chats. My name is Rob Colbert, and I'm here with Sunil Aggarwal. He is an MD and co-founder of the Advanced Integrative Medical Science Institute in Seattle. Thank you for being here. We're going to ask, these community chats are a little bit, they're designed to explore how community members, professionals, artists, and others have refined their relationship with drugs and medicines of all kinds, particularly psychedelics. So to get started, the burning question that we came down to was, what were you taught was wrong or unhealthy or dangerous about drugs?
Thanks for having me, Rob. I would say I was taught a whole lot of negative information about substances in the drug category, which is all sort of a blanket category. There was no distinction. There was just drugs. Drugs are dangerous. Drugs will fry your brain. They will lead to dropping your intelligence, your drive to succeed and achieve in the world. You know, those kind of messages is what I was receiving throughout my early and middle childhood and probably into adolescence. So, but from an early age, you know, I was born in '79. And so I was really coming in early middle childhood was the Reagan era. Nancy Reagan, you know, was really directing, like the first lady was directing her attention to children my age. So you know, what an influence that has on a youth to be spoken to by the, you know, wife of the head of state, or, you know, the first lady. And I'm living in a place that's very pro-Republican. You know, Oklahoma, a lot of federal government employees actually in the town that I grew up in Muskogee, my father being one. So it's kind of had a lot. It kind of went right in. It was an authoritative message from the top of the ladder saying, just stay away. This is not good for you at all. It's dangerous, and you'll end up, you know, a loser, a failure. And that really stuck with me as a minority with the model minority myth too. I, you know, was worried about, okay, I need to get by in the world, and I can't do this. It'll put me at risk. And I really I judged my friends who would use drugs. I was like, oh, this is not right. What are you doing? You know, you're hurting yourself. And so, and then, you know, as I learned more refined things about these drugs, they're still like, okay, well, the marijuana, like, that's kind of make you crazy or lose motivation. Mushrooms, just kind of something like falling off a cliff and into an abyss that you never come out of, or some kind of crazy punk fantasy that's just that you will live in for the rest of your life. Like, it was this real, like, hyper exaggerated fears. And it's really amazing what you can do when you create an absolute ignorance about something, that you can really fill it with whatever you want. You don't tell people that, you know, these are substances, these are mushrooms that have a sacred history around the world, and traditional use, and you know, these medical properties that people have been aware of for a long time, but even more so now. But those things weren't there. So that's what my head was filled with. And I guess it's worth saying, you know, I think as I learned from my own experiences with these substances as a college student, which is kind of a rite of passage in this country, it seems like, in many places as well. And in traditional cultures too, people use psychoactive substances, psychedelic substances, entheogenic substances to mark a transition point in development, or to come of age, or to face a new challenge in life. That's sort of what these substances help me with, and also coming to be aware of my own you know, shortcomings, and get out of myself a greater awareness of the world around me and the people around me, and what's the realm of consciousness experience. And that's what really I've now come to understand, is that there's really, like, multiple states of awareness and consciousness, states of being that we can inhabit and learn from and find valuable. And that's really the idea from the old days, was that everything is this single state. You have to be in this single state of mind, this rational, logical, go-getting, be able to fly a plane and drive a bus at a drop of a hat, and perform open heart surgery like right now. Like that was the sort of space of what was supposed to be the cultivated, like, American mind. And I've learned now that absolutely we're designed for actually this more to be in a state of social engagement, of healing, of growth, and that those kind of spaces require you to get out of an alarm state, to get out of a threat state. And the substances like these can really help to bring people into that state, and where you can actually be more creative and more connected, and more well. So that's sort of what I've learned about the multiple states of consciousness that are actually the rainbow of human experience that was not taught to me, thanks to the laws and the prohibitions.
No, I appreciate that, and I appreciate how you talk about that ignorance. The forced ignorance can be then filled with anything, and so, yeah, it kind of calls out then. So here you are, MD, PhD, all checking all the boxes for credentials, psychiatrist, psychotherapist, all the things. And yeah, so now you're at this place of actually being able to advocate in a different way. And I want to ask about that. So you work in hospice and palliative care with folks, and the Ames Institute, as well as the Emerge Law Firm, have petitioned the DEA for some clarification on this front. So I kind of want to uncover a little bit of what led to that turn for you.
Certainly, Rob. So I guess I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm a palliative care specialist, but I've spent and a rehab medicine physician, but I've spent a lot of time working with mental health specialists in my training, and really believe that the mind-body separation that we've done in so many parts of our society and in healthcare is a detriment, and that psychiatric psych issues come everywhere throughout the life spectrum, and that we should all in healthcare be familiar with them and comfortable, informed by trauma, how we know how trauma operates. So anyway, for a long time, I really have, learned from pioneers like Dr. Lester Grinspoon, who was a psychiatrist who petitioned, the DEA about the scheduling of MDMA, and has also argued about the benefits of cannabis, marijuana. I also worked with Dr. Todd Mikaria. He was a doctor in Berkeley who worked at the NIH, and also really tried to push the grandfathering of cannabis in the federal laws, and on behalf of his patients, on behalf of his clinical experience. I work with Dr. Frank Lucido, whose patient went to the Supreme Court on defending her right to use cannabis as a medical medicine. So I was always very interested, and I was involved with Physicians for Social Responsibility and Physicians for Human Rights. And I wanted medicine that's engaged in advocacy on behalf of patients, on behalf of public health, doctoring that's sort of right there engaged with the advocacy on behalf of the patients, leveraging that aspect of whatever privilege we have, the knowledge we've been able to gain, and the standing we have from long-standing Hippocratic oath that goes back, to ancient times. That to me is a necessary thing to wield to help, change improve public health and protect patients' rights, and improve access to care, which is in such a disarray in this country, with the lack of access left and right. But there's one thing about, okay, we know this is a medicine, and you just can't afford it, versus like we could deny this even being a medicine, even as something that's naturally derived. And that's how extremely off it is. And so when I had patients, terminally ill patients, advanced patients with advanced illness often need special legal protections, legal accommodations, because they don't have as much time compared to everybody else in society. They need to get to the front of the line. It's sort of a basic triage thing from emergency care, but the public health should do the same thing. And so I was really happy when I saw that we had these laws, these right to try laws that got passed in many, many states. And, the idea is that like drugs that, and I've been involved in drug research as well in my career and training, drugs that are in research stages, they take many years to come out of research into clinical practice. And so but those substances that the government says, okay, you're safe to use in humans, but you're still needing more research. When can you, if you're dealing with an illness that's life-threatening, when can you say, all right, I'd like to try that medicine now because I don't have a lot of time left. I understand that it's, hasn't been proven completely by the official final seal of approval by the regulatory bodies, but I need to have some hope, and I believe that everyone is entitled to the benefits of scientific research and progress in our society. So that's what these laws sort of are enshrining, is that we are entitled as a public health benefit. These substances, these drugs, treatments, and research are a public health good. And that we have to find a way to like reach that, beyond the pharmaceutical companies' goal with that medicine, because they get a lot of benefits from the government to do this kind of research. There's an exchange. In exchange, the government says, all right, you should be able to supply this to somebody if they want it. We're not going to make you do that, but we want you to know that they have this right to ask you for it, and you have the right to give it to them if you so choose. And I think that's sort of where we, when that law was passed, it made sense that this should be tried with these psychedelic substances because of their very impressive abilities at rapid healing of significant psychiatric maladies, but also patients with medical conditions who have demoralization, and what impact that might have on the psyche, on the whole immune system, on the nervous system. We really that's the frontier. And we already know that high quality palliative care, which is kind of a multidisciplinary biopsychosocial spiritual healing system that actually not only improves quality of life with patients at the end of life or with serious illness, but also can extend the lifespan. So better quality of life and longer life in patients with life-threatening illness. And the psychedelics are very much are increasingly becoming part of the palliative care toolbox. Many palliative care clinicians want to utilize them in practice, and a lot of the research is focused on that. So to me, it's a no-brainer that then we should apply right to try for a psychedelic substance, in this case, psilocybin. And so when Emerge Law Group came to, Catherine, who's with Emerge, I knew her before she was with Emerge, because she's been such an advocate for patients at the end of life, for their rights to aid in dying, access to palliative sedation, all kinds of things that patients might need. Because the rule book the standard rules, it's a different rule guide when you're dealing with intractable, serious suffering at the end of life. And so that's what she advocates for. And she knew that psychedelics were something that could be helpful for palliative care. And she's already starting those conversations in the legal frameworks. And when she reached out to me and says, do you have patients that might want to try access psilocybin under right to try? I said, absolutely. It comes up all the time. People just don't know how to make it happen. And I've been looking for guidance on the FDA websites, and there really wasn't much after the law was passed. So she had developed a legal framework to understand it, was in the process of publishing an article in a law review. And so that's how she said, this is the way we would do it. And she took on, she met with me and asked some patients who said they would like to do this as part of their healing work, and they understood that it might be a long process, but they were ready to do that. And then she became our lawyers. She said, we'll represent you for free, pro bono, because this case has such significant public health implications, public interest. So it's really, it's been a process from that realization to here are the steps you take, here's who you would ask, here are the companies that are making it, here's the regulatory authorities at the state and federal level that we would need to check with. And we're doing all those steps. And in the process of that, we got this well, actually, DEA says, no, your interpretation is wrong. Like, this law does not change the way that these substances, even though they're used in research and considered breakthrough therapies, they're still, even though phase 1 and phase 2 studies have shown safety, we still say they're Schedule 1, which means they're unsafe for use, even under medical supervision, which is actually what Schedule 1 means. At the same time, we have all these studies that are saying it is safe. It's past phase 1, past phase 2, and it's obviously, like, there's this like one law based on old understandings, the ignorance, and and then this new law, which is based on emerging science. And that's the conflict that I see that we want the court to resolve, because these patients, again, they don't have a lot of time to wait for these kind of battles, and I think it's the right thing to do. So that's how I got involved, and I'm really hoping that we get some favorable ruling in September, is when that's when the oral arguments will be held, or first week of September, and then soon after that, I'm sure we'll know. But just this week, we heard from the government for the first time since they sent us that letter in response to our arguments in the lawsuit and in the petition. And it's they're still kind of on the old paradigm. It's still, this might make the problem of drug abuse and addiction in society worse, and that's just the idea that the drug only fits in this this category of always bad and always dangerous is kind of that, and that is the mentality that's been etched into our minds with the prohibition and everything else, and I think this agency really. It's time for us to reform this in a significant way, just like we've been reforming so many other institutions that are based in much older ways of how we relate with each other, and so I'm hopeful that this will be a chance for us to do that.
I appreciate that. I do, and this is the important critique of these drugs or substances only being dangerous, and I always think it's interesting that we have a culture of use around Tylenol, which can kill a whole family with a bottle that you could buy at the 7-Eleven down the street, right? Like the kiddos, the adults included, is enough for that to be super dangerous, accidental or otherwise. And that's readily available. So it's interesting that some psilocybin mushrooms under medical supervision is kind of like, whoa, you want to do what?
Right. It's a moral danger it presents, and that's sort of, I don't think there's really any kind of, like Tylenol more than 3 grams a day can give you liver failure, and it's one of the leading causes of liver failure, and people die from that and need transplants. Psilocybin, we know, doesn't have these end organ issues, and we know the risk of chronic, mental health issues is almost nil when you have good screening, and really it doesn't happen. So what is it that we're protecting ourselves from? It's the same, I think it's the same knee jerk that, when colonization happened in the Americas, and Europeans came into contact with mushroom use in the the indigenous groups in the what's now modern Mexico, Texas area, and they just said, you guys are doing demonic worship. So it was tinged with the Inquisition. Inquisition is like, are you pure or are you not pure? And it was like they were deemed not pure by doing that. And so there is this religious sort of prohibitionist zeal that is sort of you're kind of going into a place that's kind of just bringing intolerance of other ways of being inside. And I think that got codified into the laws in some form or fashion, because and I've reviewed the Nixon tapes when I was in fellowship at the NIH. I've written articles. I mean, it's true. His views are very much like there's pure people and there's unclean people, pure races, dirty races, drugs that good people use, better races. It's very much a racialized, which comes from an Inquisition mindset. So I think it's and then he's the president that signed this law into place that the DEA is defending. It's somebody who had these extremely religious zealot views that were racialized against gay people, against Jewish people, anti-Semitic. that's really what this is. It's a danger on the moral plane, and that's what he would talk about in the tapes. I don't want to see these kind of things. They're destroying our moral fabric of our society. He was in conversation with Art Linkletter, whose daughter was using LSD. Later, Art Linkletter, said that it wasn't LSD that really drove his daughter to die, and he kind of just got caught up in all of that. But in those days, it was like the war was on the front, the politics. It became a kind of and I know a lot about this because I'm from Oklahoma, Muskogee, which is kind of a place that was enshrined in a song that came out in 1970 called Okie from Muskogee, which was also about the reaction to the 60s counterculture. We don't smoke marijuana in Muskogee. We don't take our trips on LSD. We don't burn our draft cards down on Main Street. So that's sort of I'm familiar with this is a culture war, but it's a real war. There's real casualties. The casualty here in this case is like the truth about medicine and spirituality. I mean, that's a serious casualty. I mean, so I'm hoping that we can call this war, at least some fronts of it, to end, because we're only ending up hurting ourselves. Like we're all going to die, and we all need some relief from the existential distress that can cause, especially when you're dealing with a globe that's still on the brink of wide-scale war, global warming, resource loss to biodiversity, the climate, the ecological things that we've done. And so I feel like we're really, and the DEA agents and officials, they have their families and lives too. And we actually had a number of former DEA agents who've helped us, at least one that's sort of come out and recognized from his own challenges in his own family that what he was taught about drugs and enforced was wrong. So I do think this is really kind of they're just going through the motions, but I don't really know if anybody believes this. And it's kind of amazing that can happen, but that does happen in large systems. People just go through the motions.
Anyway. Well, and I think ultimately, thank you for addressing the ignorance, right? Because sometimes it is at these levels, and it's got to be confronted by the system, because it's actually a verb at that point. It's a purposeful ignoring. It's ignore ants, right? And so it's kind of like, well, wait, no, medical science, we've got research. Even with as hard as it was to do, here's research that says not dangerous.
That's right. I
appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. I really appreciate Nowak Society for helping us support the work of these amazing attorneys that are really, taking their time out of their other cases that are giving them, payment to help with this case. And they're doing amazing work. They're writing brilliant briefs that really are kind of looking at the whole history of medicine regulation, really making the arguments how this is so contradictory to what the DEA has done in other cases where there's a medical need, and really just trying to educate the court and of course the public about how we should be regulating these experiment substances that are like this, and what the needs are for palliative care. So I'm really, the Nowak Society is making that possible, and I'm grateful to you all and your listeners and viewers for helping us. And hopefully this will spark more. This case is for two of my patients, and they're real patients. They have bona fide needs, but they know that and this is always happens, very frequently happens with my cancer patients I take care of. They're thinking about the entire field of cancer patients like them. If they find something that helps them, they want the people they met at their support group and at and the national organizations for them to know about it too. It's just a natural. It's part of our when we help others, it makes us feel better. I think that's what I hope. If the help that can come out of this could be more wide-reaching than just these two patients is why we're doing this. So I just wanted to remind people about that. And that's kind of. Do you have other questions for me, Rob, about this case?
Well, I think for now that that'll wrap it up. I appreciate it. I really appreciate the conversation. Again, this is Dr. Sunil Aggarwal out of the Ames Institute in Seattle. Thank you. It's definitely been great talking to you.
Thank you so much.